The morning sun rose over Volante Prime, painting the sky in soft shades of purple and gold. In the gardens of House Voss, a human man knelt in the dirt, his hands deep in the soil. His name was Daniel Hayes, and he had been tending these gardens for 5 years now. Daniel was not a tall man. He was not loud or impressive. He wore simple clothes, always covered in dirt and grass stains. His brown hair was often messy, and he kept his eyes down when others walked past. To anyone watching, he was just a gardener, nothing more. The Volante were tall beings, elegant and proud. Their skin was pale blue, and their eyes were large and silver. They moved with grace, spoke with careful words, and valued power above all things. The noble houses of Volante Prime had ruled for thousands of years through politics, marriages, and sometimes war. Lady Celera Voss was one of them. She was beautiful by any standard, with long silver hair and eyes that seemed to hold starlight within them. She was the younger sister of Lord Caelan Voss, the head of their ancient house, and 5 years ago she had done something that shocked everyone. She had married a human daughter, not a human diplomat, not a human soldier or scientist. She had married Daniel Hayes, a man with no title, no wealth, and no family name worth mentioning. She had met him during a diplomatic visit to Earth, and something about him had captured her heart. Her family had never understood it. Her brother Caelan tolerated Daniel, but never respected him. The servants whispered behind his back. Other noble houses laughed at House Voss for allowing such a marriage. The pet human, they called him, the gardener who married above his station. Daniel never responded to any of it. He simply worked in his garden day after day, growing flowers and vegetables that the kitchen staff used for meals. He ate alone most of the time. He avoided the grand dinners in political gatherings. When nobles visited, he made himself invisible. This morning was like any other. Daniel carefully planted seeds, a row, his gloved hands moving with practiced skill. He always wore gloves, even in warm weather. No one knew why, and no one cared enough to ask. A young Volante girl appeared at the edge of the garden. Her name was Mira, and she was a servant in the household. She was barely 16 years old, with curious eyes and a kind smile. Unlike the others, she had always been nice to Daniel. "Good morning, Master Daniel," she said softly. Daniel looked up and gave her a small smile. "Just Daniel is fine, Mira, you know that." She nodded and walked closer, carrying a tray with water and bread. "I brought you breakfast," cook said. "You forgot to eat." "Again, thank you." Daniel took the bread and bit into it. "You're very kind." Mira sat on a nearby stone bench watching him work. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course. Why do you always work alone? The other servants say you never talk to anyone. Don't you get lonely?" Daniel was quiet for a moment. He looked at the flowers around him, their petals bright in the morning light. "I like the quiet," he said finally. "Plants don't judge you. They don't ask questions. They just grow." Myra tilted her head. "But Lady Celera loves you. I can see it when she looks at you. Why don't you spend more time with her?" "I do spend time with her," Daniel said, "just not in the ways everyone expects." Before Myra could ask more, the sound of footsteps made them both turn. Lady Celera walked through the garden archway, her silver dress flowing behind her. Even after 5 years, Daniel's heart still beat little faster when he saw her. Daniel she said, her voice warm. There you are. He stood and brushed the dirt from his knees. Good morning. Sierra walked to him and took his hand. Even through the gloves, her touch was gentle. My brother wants to see us. There's news from the capital. Daniel's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. What kind of news? House Deven is making moves against us. Political attacks, accusations of broken treaties. Kalen thinks they're planning something bigger. Daniel nodded slowly. House Deven was powerful and ambitious. Their leader, Lord Tyon Deven, had always hated House Voss, and Daniel had noticed the way Tyon looked at Celia during council meetings. It was not a kind look. They walked together through the estate, past marble pillars and hanging gardens. Servants bowed as Celia passed, but their eyes lingered on Daniel with barely hidden contempt. He ignored them as he always did. Lord Kalen Voss waited in the main hall. He was tall, even for a Volante, with sharp features and cold eyes. He sat in a chair that looked almost like a throne, his fingers pressed together, and thought. Sister, he said as they entered. Then after a pause, Daniel. Brother. Sierra sat across from him. Daniel stood behind her, silent. House Draven has formally accused us of violating the trade accord of Velmos. Kalen said. It's a lie, of course, but Tyon has all eyes on the council. He's building a case against us. What does he want? Sierra asked. Kalen's jaw tightened. Power, territory, and probably you, sister. He's made no secret of his interest. Sir's hands clenched. I will never. I know. Kalen raised a hand. But we must be careful. Tyon is dangerous, and he has resources we cannot match openly. Daniel listened without speaking. His eyes moved to the windows, then to the doors, then back to Kalen. Old habits never quite forgotten. That night Celia found Daniel in the greenhouse, the place where he kept his most precious plants. He was sitting on a wooden stool, staring at nothing. You've been quiet, she said, sitting beside him. I'm always quiet. She touched his face, turning it toward her. More than usual. What are you thinking? Daniel looked into her eyes. For a moment something passed across his face, something old and heavy. I'm thinking that trouble is coming, and I don't know if I can protect you from it. Sierra smiled softly. You're a gardener. Daniel, you're not supposed to protect me. That's what guards are for. Daniel didn't smile back. He just took her hand and held it, his grip firm through the gloves. Dot in the darkness outside, far from the estate, soldiers wearing the colors of House Deven moved silently through the forest. They carried weapons and orders. War was coming to House Voss. Dot and the quiet gardener could feel it in his bones. 3 days passed and the tension in House Voss grew thicker with each hour. Servants whispered in corners. Guards doubled their patrols. Lord Kalen spent his days in meetings with advisors, trying to find a way out of the trap that House Greven was building around them. Daniel continued his work in the garden as if nothing had changed. But those who looked closely might have noticed small differences. He moved more carefully now. His eyes scanned the tree, and more often, and late at night, when everyone else was asleep, he sometimes walked the grounds alone, checking doors and windows. On the 4th day, visitors arrived. The carriage that rolled through the gates of House Voss was black and gold, the colors of House Deven. Guards in polished armor marched alongside it, their faces hidden behind helmets. When the carriage Door opened, Lord Tyan Devin stepped out. He was handsome in the way the predators are handsome. His features were sharp, his smile never reaching his silver eyes. He wore fine clothes and carried himself like a man who had never been told no in his entire life. Lord Kalen, Tyan said as he walked up the steps. Thank you for receiving me. Kalen stood at the entrance, his expression carefully neutral. You gave me little choice, Tyan. Your message said you wish to discuss peace. Indeed I do. Tyan's smile widened. May I come in? The meeting took place in the great hall. Servants brought wine and food that no one touched. Kalen sat at one end of the long table. Tyan sat at the other. Seera was present as well as custom demanded, and Daniel stood in the corner invisible as always. Tyan's eyes found him immediately. Ah, he said, his voice dripping with false warmth. The human, I had almost forgotten about him. He looked at Seera. Tell me, my lady, does he do tricks? Can he fetch things? The room went cold. Seera's hands tightened on the arms of her chair. My husband is not a topic for discussion, she said. Husband? Tyan laughed. Yes, I suppose that is what you call him, though I cannot imagine why a woman of your beauty and status would lower herself to such a creature. He turned to Daniel directly. Tell me, human, what exactly do you offer her? You have no wealth, no power, no name. You cannot even protect her. What good are you? Daniel said nothing. He simply stood there, his face blank, his hands clasped behind his back. Tyan waited for a response. When none came, he laughed again. As I thought, a pet without teeth. Enough, Kalen said, his voice sharp. You came to discuss peace, Tyan. Speak your terms. Tyan leaned back in his chair, still smiling. Very well, my terms are simple. House Voss will surrender 3 of your trading stations to House Draven. You will pay a tribute of 10,000 credits per cycle, and he looked at Seera with hungry eyes. You will dissolve this embarrassing marriage and accept a proper union with me. The silence that followed was deafening. Seera rose from her chair, her body shaking with anger. Never, I would rather die than careful, my lady. Tyan's smile turned cold. Words like that can be arranged. Kalen stood as well. This meeting is over. Leave my house, Tyan. Tyan rose slowly, adjusting his coat. Very well, but consider my offer carefully, Kalen. The alternative will be far less pleasant. He walked toward the door, then paused beside Daniel. You know, he said quietly, when I take her, I might let you watch, just so you understand your place in this galaxy. Daniel's eyes met Tyvan's for the first time. Something passed between them. Flash of something that made Tyan's smile falter just for a moment. Then Daniel looked away, and the moment passed. Tyan left with his guards. The black and gold carriage rolled back through the gates, disappearing into the distance. That night, Sailor found Daniel in their bedroom. He was sitting by the window, looking out at the dark forest beyond the walls. I'm sorry, she said, sitting beside him. For what? He said, for all of it. It's not your fault, but you must feel something. Seera took his hand. He insulted you in front of everyone. He threatened us, and you just stood there. Don't you have any pride? Daniel was quiet for a long time. When he spoke, his voice was soft. Pride is expensive, he said. It costs things that can never be replaced. What does that mean? He turned to look at her. In the moonlight, his face seemed older, somehow harder. There are things about my past that I've never told you, Seera. Things I hoped I would never have to tell you. She squeezed his hand. Then, tell me now. But Daniel shook his head. Not yet, maybe not ever. He pulled her close and held her. Just know that I love you more than anything in this galaxy, and I will keep you safe no matter what it costs. Sierra wanted to argue. She wanted to demand answers, but something in his voice stopped her. Something that sounded almost like grief. They fell asleep in each other's arms outside in the darkness of the forest. Commander WTH watched the estate through a spyglass. He was Tyvan's most trusted enforcer, a veteran of dozens of battles. His face was marked with scars, and his eyes were as cold as winter. Behind him, 200 soldiers waited. Silence. They wore dark armor and carried weapons that could cut through steel. The signal will come at midnight. Reth said to his lieutenants, we move fast. Kill the guards. Capture Lord Kalen. Bring the lady unharmed. He paused. The human is not important. Kill him if he gets in the way. The soldiers nodded. Midnight came closer, and Daniel Hayes, the quiet gardener, lay awake in bed, listening to the sounds of the night. Something was wrong. He could feel it. The air was too still. The insects had stopped singing. He gently moved his arm from his chest and sat up. War had arrived at House Vostet, and the man they called a pet was about to remember who he really was. The attack came without warning. One moment the estate was peaceful. The next, explosions ripped through the night. The main gate shattered inward. Guards fell before they could even draw their weapons. Dark-armored soldiers poured through the breach like a flood of shadows. Thought Daniel was already moving before the first explosion ended. He grabbed Celira's arm and pulled her out of bed. We have to go, he said. Now what's happening? Her eyes were wide with fear. House Diven, they're attacking. Daniel pulled her toward the door. We need to get you somewhere safe. They ran through the halls as chaos erupted around them. Servants screamed and fled in every direction. The sound of fighting echoed from the main wing. Daniel kept Celira close, guiding her through passages she didn't even know existed. Where are we going? She asked. The greenhouse. Why there? Daniel didn't answer. He just kept moving. They burst through a side door and into the garden. The night air was thick with smoke. In the distance, Daniel could see the main house burning. Soldiers were everywhere, their dark armor gleaming in the fur. Ght. Near the garden entrance, they found young Mira. The servant girl was hiding behind a statue, trembling with fear. Myra pulled the girl into her arms. Are you hurt? No, my lady of the soldiers. They're killing everyone. Daniel looked back at the house through the windows. He could see Lord Kalen being dragged by soldiers. He was alive but bleeding. Commander WTH stood over him, giving orders. They have my brother, Celira whispered. I know. Daniel guided both women toward the greenhouse. Inside, quickly, the greenhouse was dark and quiet. Plants hung from the ceiling and covered every surface. It smelled of earth and growing things. Daniel closed the door behind them and locked it. Stay here, he said. Don't make a sound. Daniel, what are you going to do? Sierra grabbed his arm. You can't fight them. There are too many. Daniel looked at her for a long moment. Then he walked to the corner of the greenhouse where an old wooden chest sat beneath a table. He had kept it there for 5 years. Sierra had asked about it once, and he had said it contained gardening tools. He knelt and opened the chest. Inside was a bundle wrapped in dark cloth. Daniel unwrapped it slowly, revealing what lay beneath. It was a sword, not an elegant alien blade, not a ceremonial weapon. It was a human sword, simple and straight, with a worn leather handle and a blade that had been sharpened countless times. It was a weapon made for one purpose only. Killing. Weiler stared at it. Daniel, what is that? He didn't answer. He stood and held the sword, his hand testing its weight. His posture changed, his shoulders straightened. The soft, quiet gardener seemed to fade away, replaced by something else entirely. Stay here, he said again. His voice was different now, harder, colder. Protect Myra, don't come out until I return, Daniel. But he was already gone. Outside, 6 soldiers had found their way into the garden. They moved between the flowers and trees, searching for anyone hiding. Check the greenhouse, one of them ordered. Lady might be inside. They walked toward the glass building. The leader reached for the door. It opened from the inside. Daniel stepped out. He still wore his simple clothes, dirt stains and all, but in his hand was the sword, and in his eyes was something the soldiers had never seen before, a human. The leader laughed. This is the gardener. Get out of the way, little creature. Daniel said nothing. The soldier raised his weapon to push Daniel aside. What happened next took less than 3 seconds. Daniel moved like water, like wind, like death itself. The first soldier fell before he could blink. The second and third went down together, their weapons clattering uselessly to the ground. The fourth tried to run. He didn't make it 2 steps. The fifth swung his blade in desperation. Daniel stepped around it like it was moving in slow motion and ended him with a single strike. The 6th soldier turned to flee. Daniel let him go. Tell Commander Ref. Daniel called after him. Tell him the gardener is coming. The soldier ran into the night screaming. Inside the greenhouse, Cellar watched through the glass. Her hands covered her mouth. The man standing in the garden surrounded by fallen soldiers was her husband, the same man who planted flowers and spoke softly and never raised his voice, and he had just killed 5 soldiers in the time it took to draw a breath. More soldiers came, 10 this time, led by Commander Reth himself. The scarred veteran stopped when he saw the bodies on the ground. Impressive, Reth said. For a human. He drew his own sword, a massive curved blade. But I've killed hundreds of warriors. You're just a gardener. Daniel raised his sword. I was never just a gardener. They fought. Wrath was fast for his size, strong. 2. His blade cut through the air with deadly precision. Any normal opponent would have died in seconds, but Daniel was not normal. He moved around Reth's attacks like a ghost. Every strike that should have hit found only air. Every opening that Reth left was punished with a cut, small but precise. Within a minute, Reth was bleeding from a dozen wounds. What are you, Reth? Gasped. Daniel didn't answer. He just kept fighting. The end came quickly. Reth made one final desperate attack. Daniel stepped inside his guard and drove his sword through the commander's chest. Wrath fell to his knees, staring up at Daniel with dying eyes. Who are you? Daniel pulled his sword free. Someone who wanted to be forgotten. Wrath collapsed and moved no more. The remaining soldiers fled. Daniel stood alone among the bodies, his sword dripping red. Behind him, the greenhouse door opened. Sierra stepped out, Mira clutching her arm. Daniel, Sierra, and LT Unc and GT Voice was barely a whisper. He turned to face her. The coldness in his eyes faded slightly when he saw her, but it didn't disappear completely. Take Myra, he said. Find the servants' quarters in the East Wing. Hide there until morning. What about you? Daniel looked toward the main house where Lord Kalen was still held prisoner, where Tyon Devin was probably celebrating his victory. I'm going to get your brother back, Daniel. No, there are too many of them. You'll be killed. He walked to her and touched her face gently. His hand was warm, even covered in blood. I should have told you the truth years ago, he said, about who I was, what I did, but I wanted to be someone different with you, someone peaceful. He pulled away. I'm sorry you had to see this. Then he walked into the darkness toward the enemy, his sword in his hand. Sierra watched him go. The quiet man she had married was gone, and something far more dangerous had taken his place. Daniel moved through the night like a shadow. The soldiers of House Draven had spread across the estate, securing positions and hunting for survivors. They moved in groups of 4 or 5, confident in their numbers and their victory. They had taken the great house Voss in a single night. What could possibly threaten them now? They didn't see Daniel coming. He took them apart, group by group, silent, efficient, deadly. No wasted movement, no mercy. Bodies fell in the darkness, and their comrades never even heard them screamed. On as he moved through the estate, memories came to him unbidden, memories he had tried to bury for years. He remembered Earth, the training camps in the mountains, the endless drills, the instructors who broke men down and rebuilt them into weapons. He'd been young then, barely 20 years old, full of fire and purpose. He remembered his unit, 12 men and women, the best of the best. They called themselves the Quiet Ones because they never announced their presence. They simply appeared, completed their mission, and vanished. Governments hired them for jobs that could never be acknowledged, targets that could never officially exist. Daniel had been their leader. His cow sign was Ghost, not because he was hard to see, but because by the time you saw him, you were already dead. For 8 years, he had done terrible things in the name of peace. He had killed warlords and terrorists and criminals. He had ended threats before they could grow. He had kept the shadows at Bayard, and then came Meridian Station. The mission was supposed to be simple. A terrorist cell was hiding in a space station near Mars. They were planning an attack that would kill thousands. Daniel's team was sent to stop them, but the intelligence was wrong. The terrorists had moved, and when Daniel's team breached the station, they didn't find enemies. They found families. 37 civilians died that day. Men, women, children, all because someone had given them bad information. All because Daniel had trusted the wrong people. He had held a dying child in his arms, a little girl no older than 5. She had looked up at him with confused eyes and asked why he was hurting them. He had no answer. After Meridian, Daniel couldn't continue. The blood on his hands was too heavy. The faces of the dead followed him everywhere. He resigned from his unit, destroyed every record of his existence, and fled Earth. He wandered the galaxy for 2 years, taking odd jobs, never staying anywhere. Along, he was looking for something, though he didn't know what. Peace, maybe. Forgiveness, a reason to keep living. He found Celira instead. She was on Earth for a diplomatic mission, representing House Voss at a trade conference. Daniel was working as a security consultant, a job that required no killing, just watching, waiting, being invisible. She had noticed him anyway. "You look sad," she had said to him one night, finding him alone on a balcony. "Like you're carrying something heavy." "Everyone carries something," he had replied. She had smiled at him then, smile full of warmth and kindness. "Would you like to put it down for a while? I know a good restaurant nearby." It was such a simple thing, dinner with a stranger, but for Daniel it was the first time in years that someone had looked at him and seen a person instead of a weapon. He fell in love with her over the following months, and when she asked him to come to Volante Prime as her husband, he said yes, not because he deserved happiness, but because she made him believe he could become someone new. For 5 years he had been that person, the quiet gardener, the harmless human. He had planted flowers and watched them grow. He had held his wife at night and tried to forget the blood on his hands. But tonight the ghost had returned. Daniel reached the main house. Most of it was burning now, but the central hall was still intact. That was where they would be keeping Kaelin. That was where Tyan would be waiting. He climbed through a broken window and moved through the smoke-filled corridors. Guards stood at every door, but they never saw him coming. One by one they fell. The central hall was guarded by 20 soldiers. Daniel counted them from the shadows, 20 against 1. Bad odds for most people. Not for him. He struck without warning. The first 5 went down before the others even knew he was there. The next 5 died trying to form a defensive line. The remaining 10 fought hard, but fear made them sloppy. They had heard about the gardener who killed Commander WTH. They had seen the bodies in the garden. When it was over, Daniel stood alone in the room full of fallen soldiers. His breathing was steady. His hands didn't shake. This was what he had been trained for. This was what he was. He pushed open the door to the inner chamber. Lord Kaelin Voss was tied to a chair, blood running down his face. Tyan Deven stood behind him, knife at Kaelin's throat. "Stop right there, human." Tyan's voice was tight with fear. "One more step and I'll kill him." Daniel stopped. He looked at Tyan with empty eyes. "No, you won't." "I will. I swear it. If you kill him, you have nothing to bargain with, and then I'll kill you." Daniel's voice was calm, reasonable, like he was discussing the weather. "Let him go. Walk away live." Tyan's hand trembled. "You're bluffing. You're just a human, a gardener." "I was never a gardener." Daniel took a step forward. "I was something else, something that made men like you surrender rather than fight, something that gave nightmares to people who thought they were too powerful to fear anything." Another step. "My cow sign was ghost. I killed more people than you can count. I ended wars before they started. I was the thing that waited in the darkness." Another step. "And for 5 years I tried to be someone else, someone peaceful, someone kind." He was close now, close enough to see the sweat on Tyan's face. "But you threatened my wife. You attacked my home. You forced me to remember what I am." Daniel raised his sword. "So here I am, Lord Tyan, the ghost of Earth, the quiet man who married above his station." He smiled, and there was no warmth in it at all. "Are you afraid yet?" Tyan's nerve broke. He shoved Kaelin aside and swung his knife at Daniel. "Doubt the fight lasted 4 seconds. Daniel didn't kill him. He could have. It would have been easy, but instead he disarmed Tyan and drove him to his knees, the sword at his throat. You're going to surrender. Daniel said quietly, publicly, you're going to confess to attacking Housewar without cause, and then you're going to spend the rest of your life in disgrace. Kill me instead, Tyon whispered, please. No, Daniel leaned closer. Death is easy. Living with shame is hard, and I want you to suffer. He pulled Tyon to his feet and dragged him toward the door. Behind him, Lord Cailan stared with wide eyes. The human he had dismissed for 5 years had just saved his life. The gardener he had called an embarrassment had destroyed House Raven's entire attack force single-handedly. Daniel, Cailan said hoarsely, what are you? Daniel looked back, clear's throat at him. For a moment the coldness in his eyes faded. I'm your sister's husband, he said simply, and I protect what I love. Then he walked into the burning night, dragging his prisoner. Behind him, the sun rose over Valenti Prime, revealing the full extent of the night's destruction. Half of House Voss's estate lay in ruins. The main gate was shattered, buildings still smoldered, bodies were scattered across the grounds, most of them wearing the dark armor of House Devin, but House Voss still stood. In the days that followed, the news spread across the planet like wildfire. Lord Tyon, driven, had been forced to confess his crimes before the High Council. His attack on House Voss without formal declaration of war violated every treaty and tradition that held Valenti society together. His lands were seized, his titles were stripped, his allies abandoned him like rats fleeing a sinking ship. House Devin, one of the most powerful families on Volante Prime, collapsed in a single week, and everyone was talking about how it happened. The gardener, the quiet human, the pet who turned out to be something else entirely. Stories spread through every noble house, every servants' quarters, every tavern and market. Some said he killed 50 soldiers that night, others said 100. Some claimed he wasn't human at all, but some kind of demon that Lady Sierra had summoned from Earth thought the truth was simpler and more frightening. He was just a man, a human man, and he had destroyed an entire army by himself. Lord Cailan called a gathering in the Great Hall, or what remained of it. Nobles from allied houses attended. Servants and guards stood along the walls and at the front of the room. Daniel stood beside Celira, still wearing his simple gardener's clothes. Cailan rose to address the crowd. 5 years ago, he began, my sister brought a human home. I thought she was foolish. I thought she had shamed our family by marrying below her station. He paused, his eyes finding Daniel. I was wrong. The room went silent. This man saved my life. He saved my sister. He saved our entire house from destruction. Cailan stepped forward and placed a hand on Daniel's shoulder. I owe him a debt I can never repay, and I want everyone here to know that Daniel Hayes is not just my sister's husband. He is a protector of House Voss. He is family. Applause filled the room. Daniel stood quietly, his face unreadable. When the noise died down, Cailan looked at him expectantly. Do you want to say anything? Cailan asked. Daniel shook his head. I'm not good with speeches. A few people laughed. The tension in the room eased slightly. Later, when the guests had left and the servants had gone to bed, Sierra found Daniel in the garden. He was kneeling in the dirt again, examining the flowers that had somehow survived the battle. They're resilient, he said without looking up. Everything around them Burned, but they're still here. Sierra sat beside him on the grass. She didn't care about her dress getting dirty. Not anymore. We need to talk, she said. I know you killed people, Daniel. A lot of people, and you did it like it was nothing, like you done it 1,000 times before. Not nothing. Daniel finally looked at her. His eyes were tired, heavy with old pain. It was never nothing. Every life I took cost me something. That's why I stopped. That's why I ran away from Earth and tried to become someone else. Tell me about Meridian Station. He flinched. It was the first time she had ever seen him react to anything with real fear. How do you know about that? You talked in your sleep last night. You said the name and then you said sorry over and over. Sierra took his hand. Tell me. So he did. He told her everything. The training, the missions, the people he had killed in the name of peace, and finally Meridian Station, the bad intelligence, the families, the children, the little girl who died in his arms. When he finished, tears were running down his face. Sierra had never seen him cry before. She hadn't known he could. I killed innocent people, he whispered. I told myself I was protecting the galaxy, but in the end I was just another monster. That's why I came here. That's why I wanted to be a gardener. I wanted to create life. Instead of taking it. Sierra was quiet for a long moment. Then she leaned forward and kissed him gently. You're not a monster, she said. Monsters don't feel guilt. Monsters don't cry for the innocent. Monsters don't spend 5 years growing flowers because they can't stand the thought of more blood on their hands. But the things I did were terrible, and you'll carry them forever. But that doesn't mean you can't also be good. She touched his face, wiping away tears. I married you because I saw kindness in you, Daniel. That kindness is still there. It was there even when you were fighting. You could have killed Tyven, but you didn't. You chose mercy. Daniel looked at her like she was offering him something precious, something he didn't deserve. How can you still love me? He asked after seeing what I really am. Because what you really are is a man who did terrible things, hated himself for it, and spent 5 years trying to become better. Sierra smiled softly. That's not weakness, Daniel, that's strength. Snorts. They sat together in the garden as the sun climbed higher. Around them flowers bloomed in defiance of the destruction that had touched everything else. Life, stubborn and beautiful, refusing to give up. In the days that followed, Daniel put his sword on a shelf in their bedroom, not hidden this time, just placed there in plain sight, a reminder of what he was capable of and what he chose not to be unless absolutely necessary. He returned to his garden. He planted new seeds. He tended the flowers that had survived, and slowly the estate began to heal. Other noble houses sent messengers and gifts. Suddenly, everyone wanted to be friends with House Voss. Everyone wanted to meet the human who had destroyed House Devin. Daniel refused all visitors. He had no interest in fame or power. He just wanted to grow things. One evening, young Myra found him working near the greenhouse. The building was damaged but still standing, and Daniel had been repairing it brick by brick. Master Daniel, she said softly. He looked up and smiled. Just Daniel, remember? Myra smiled back. She wasn't afraid of him anymore. Even after seeing what he could do. Can I help with the repairs? I'd like that. They worked together as the sun set. Sierra came to join them later, bringing food and water. The three of them sat on the grass, eating and talking about small things, normal things, the kind of things that didn't involve war or death or old sins. The galaxy knows about you now, Salira said eventually. They know what humans can do, what you can do. Daniel nodded slowly. Maybe that's not a bad thing. What do you mean? He looked up at the stars that were beginning to appear in the darkening sky. Humans have always been underestimated, he said. People see us and think we're weak, soft, harmless, but we carry our wars inside us, all the battles we fought, all the things we've survived. We bury them deep, but they never really go away. He turned to look at his wife. Maybe now they'll understand. Humans don't want to fight. We'd rather build and grow and love. But if you threaten the things we care about, he shrugged. We remember who we used to be. Salira leaned against him, her head on his shoulder. And who are you now? She asked. Daniel thought about it for a long moment. The ghost, the soldier, the gardener, the husband, all the different versions of himself, all the paths he had walked. I'm yours, he said. Finally, whatever else I am, I'm yours. And in the garden of House Voss, surrounded by flowers and starlight, the quiet human held his wife close and let himself believe that maybe, just maybe, he had finally found peace.